This week's assignment has not changed my research topic of how American Civil War commanders modified tactics to mitigate the effects of the rifled musket. But what it did do was cause me to refashion my approach. Originally, I was going to focus on changes to tactics by looking strictly at tactics themselves. Now, after conducting additional background research and completing our assignments, I believe that I will have to expand my research and take into account human factors, terrain and weather, how tactics were developed before the war, the differences in tactics between the Eastern and Western theaters, and the period of war. Was it the beginning of the war, the middle, or the end? I will admit I had more difficulty using the Oxford Scholarship Online database than other Liberty University databases, but in the end I was able to find multiple sources I can use to research my topic. For the purpose of this discussion, I decided to use the sources that caused me to adjust my topic approach. To address the human factor, I reviewed Francis Clark's War Stories, Suffering and Sacrifice in the Civil War North, Christian Keller's Chancellorsville and the Germans, and Sanders Marble's Scraping the Barrel, the military use of substandard manpower. These three books provide important insight into a soldier's physical and mental abilities and his personal background, morale, and cultures. To investigate how tactics were developed before the war, I reviewed Michael Bonyer's Under the Shadow of Napoleon, French Influence on the American Way of Warfare. This book studies the influence Napoleonic tactics had on commanders and how they were used as the basis of American tactics before the war and how they continued to influence the commanders well into the war. I chose three books to investigate the changes in tactics as the war progressed and to also understand if commanders in the Eastern and Western theaters could be characterized as being unique in any way. The Antietam Campaign by Gary Gallagher explains the tactics used prior to 1863, while Harry Fanz's Gettysburg, the Second Day, epitomizes the mix of old-style attacks and the use of natural and man-made defenses. To explore tactics used later in the war, I chose to review Cold Harbor, To the Crater, the End of the Overland Campaign, written by Gallagher and Carolyn Janey. This book deals heavily with the Confederate use of obstacles and entrenchments and the Union Army's attempt to use tactics, strategy, and innovations to overcome the devastating effects of the rifled musket. It is here that weather becomes another variable that needs investigated. Additionally, I reviewed Craig Simon's North's Civil War, Union Combined Operations in the Civil War, as a reference that studies something that was relatively new to the American way of war, the Union use of combined operations to capture key Confederate positions, and, as the war progressed, they learned how to use naval gunfire support in an attempt to mitigate the effects of the rifle and cannon fire. To be sure I appreciated the defender's side of the battle, I examined Earl Hess's Field Armies and Fortifications in the Civil War, the Eastern Campaign 1861 to 1864. Although this book focuses on the Eastern and not the Western theaters, I think it is important in the fact that it seems to illustrate why fortifications were built and their effectiveness against the attackers' tactics. After my very basic research of Liberty University's history data sources, I have to do two things before I continue my research. First, ensure I have a well-defined plan forward and that I do not become sidelined with unnecessary, irrelevant research and data. I can find myself going down a few rabbit holes and delude the focus of the research, so self-discipline is important. The second thing I need to do is go beyond the assignment requirements and ensure I completely understand all aspects of the database search engines. Thank you very much for your time.